Chapter 1. Whispers of Dawn. Let me take you back to where it all started. Back to my little village in the mountains of Shirakawa-go. Yeah, the name sounds poetic, famous for its old thatched roof houses and heavy winters. But let me tell you, it wasn't some postcard-perfect paradise. It was small, tucked so deep into the hills that even maps gave up trying to find it. No trains, no highways, and definitely no Wi-Fi. Just endless rice fields that stretched into the horizon, cedar trees that hissed and creaked whenever the wind rolled through, and houses so old they groaned like they had a soul. Sure, it sounds poetic now, but when you live there, it's more like a rustic prison with a great view. Everything smelled like wood, the good kind after a rainstorm, and every sound felt sharper in the thin mountain air. You'd hear the splash of someone washing clothes by the river, the thud of kids' bare feet chasing each other down the dirt paths, and the faint hum of villagers chanting at the shrine on the hill. It was quiet, but not the peaceful kind. It was the quiet that made you hear your own thoughts too loud, like they had nowhere to hide. And that was life in Shirakawa-go. Loud, beautiful, and just a little bit suffocating. My name is Kaito Arashi. Maybe you've heard of me. Nowadays, my name carries some weight. But back then, I was just another kid with dirt under his nails and a head full of dreams too big for a place like that. We were poor, like most families in the village. Not the sometimes we skip dessert kind of poor. More like, we'll just patch this hole in the wall with cardboard and hope it doesn't snow poor. Life wasn't about chasing dreams, it was about surviving the day. Every morning I woke up to the sound of chickens losing their damn minds outside my window. And when I say morning, I mean whenever the hell they decided to start squawking, sometimes at dawn, sometimes even earlier. There was no snooze button for those feathery little assholes. I'd groan, roll over, and bury my face in my pillow, but that never worked. Shit, I'd mutter under my breath, dragging myself up before my mom could yell. My mom, Akane, had this sixth sense about me slacking off. Her voice would rip through the house like a whip. "Kaito? You better not be lying in bed when there's work to do." She'd yell from the kitchen, where she was already up and slicing vegetables like it was a martial art. I'm up, I'd shout back, rubbing the sleep from my eyes as I shuffled across the cold wooden floor. The house was always freezing in the mornings, and the cracks between the planks didn't help. We'd stuff them with rags to keep the wind out, but it never quite worked. I'd grab my clothes from the chair in the corner of my room, sniff them to make sure they weren't too bad, and throw them on. By the time I got to the kitchen, my dad, Hiroshi, would already be sitting at the table. He wasn't much of a talker, but he had a presence that filled the room. He'd sit there, perfectly upright, sipping his tea with the kind of calm that made you feel guilty for even breathing too loudly. "You're late again," he'd say without looking up. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a quiet reminder that I was already screwing up the day before it even started. "Yeah, I know," I'd mumble, grabbing a rice ball from the table and shoving it into my mouth before he could say more. My mom would glance at me, her eyes narrowing as she handed me my bag. "Don't let the elders see you slacking," she'd warn, pointing a chopstick at me like it was a sword. "You're lucky they let you work for them at all." Lucky wasn't the word I'd use. Cleaning up after a bunch of old samurai wasn't exactly my idea of a good time. They were stern, intimidating men who carried themselves like they were still in the age of shoguns and warlords. If I was late, I'd get a tongue lashing that would make even my mom's scolding feel like a lullaby. But before I could dwell too much on that, I'd step outside, and the crisp morning air would hit me like a slap to the face. The village was waking up, the smell of burning wood and steaming rice drifting through the air. Women swept their doorsteps, men carried bundles of firewood, and kids chased each other through the narrow dirt path that twisted between houses. It was a simple life, sure, but to a kid like me, it often felt suffocating. I'd walk down the path to the dojo, the sun climbing higher and painting the rice fields in gold. The village might have been small and poor, but damn, it had a way of looking beautiful in the mornings. If I wasn't already running late, I might have stopped to take it all in. But as always, I was in a rush, racing against time and hoping I wouldn't get chewed out the moment I arrived. This was my life back then. Mornings that started in chaos, days spent juggling work and school, and nights lying in bed wondering if I'd ever escape that little village tucked away in the mountains. Little did I know, those mornings were shaping me in ways I couldn't yet understand. By the time I got to the dojo, the sun was hanging low but bright in the sky, casting long shadows across the wooden walls and dirt courtyard. The place had a certain gravity to it, like every plank of wood and every stone had soaked up centuries of history. It was a simple building, no flashy banners or ornate carvings, just sturdy beams and a roof that looked like it had seen 100 storms. But to the villagers, it was sacred ground. For me, it was where my trouble usually started. The elders were already there, a group of men who looked like they'd been carved out of stone. Wrinkled faces, calloused hands, and eyes sharp enough to cut through lies. They stood in a semicircle, their arms crossed, waiting for me like judges at a trial. The moment I stepped into the courtyard, I could feel their gazes boring into me. "Late again, Arashi," one of them said, his voice as dry and sharp as the wind on a winter morning. That was Master Itsuro, the head of the dojo. He had this way of speaking that made you feel 2 inches tall without ever raising his voice. "Sorry, master," I muttered, bowing low and trying not to meet his eyes. "The chickens." "The chickens didn't make you stay up too late gossiping with your friends, did they?" Another elder cut in. That was Master Takeshi, who always seemed to know when I was lying. I bit back a groan. "No, sir, it won't happen again." "See that it doesn't," Master Itsuro said, waving me off. "Now get to work." Work in this case meant cleaning up the dojo. Not just sweeping the floors, but scrubbing the wooden panels until they gleamed, polishing the swords displayed on the walls, and picking up the litter that somehow always found its way into the courtyard. And yes, that included scooping up after the damn stray dogs that liked to wander in. I grabbed a broom from the corner and got to it, the elders' voices droning in the background as they discussed whatever old men discussed. Politics? Weather? The best way to make a kid feel like a screw-up? I wasn't listening. My mind was on the dog poop I had to dodge and the splinters stabbing into my hands from the broom handle. "Discipline is the foundation of all strength," one of the elders said, his voice carrying across the room. "Without it, even the strongest warrior will crumble." I rolled my eyes as I knelt to scrape a sticky mess off the floor. "Yeah, sure," I muttered under my breath. "Discipline this, discipline that. Maybe discipline can clean up this crap for me." "What was that, Arashi?" Master Takeshi's voice snapped me back to reality. My heart jumped into my throat as I realized I'd said it just loud enough to be heard. Nothing, sir. Just talking to myself." "Then talk less and work more," he said, his eyes narrowing. "And if you're done complaining, remember this. Preparation is the difference between success and failure. A warrior who doesn't prepare is a fool." "Yes, sir," I said, biting my tongue. I didn't need a lecture on preparation from a guy who'd probably never been late for anything in his life. By 8 a.m., my arms were sore, my back was stiff, and my patience was wearing thin. The dojo was spotless, though, and I had just finished stacking the practice swords when I heard the sound of paws behind me. I turned just in time to see one of the stray dogs trotting into the courtyard, its tongue lolling out like it owned the place. "Oh, come on," I groaned, grabbing a stick to chase it off. The dog barked once and bolted, kicking up a cloud of dust as it disappeared through the gate. I sighed and went back to sweeping, muttering curses under my breath. "You're young, Kaito," Master Itsuro said as he walked past me, his hands tucked into his sleeves. "You think these tasks are beneath you, but even the smallest duties teach us something important. A warrior's strength isn't just in his sword arm, it's in his ability to endure, to find purpose in every action." "Yes, master," I said, nodding like I understood. But in my head? Man, I was already on autopilot, counting down the minutes till I could bounce. Endurance, purpose, discipline, all great motivational poster words, but try telling that to the kids scraping God knows what out of the floorboards with a rusty-ass spatula. I sped up my scrubbing, hoping to finish before anyone decided to add another item to my never-ending to-do list. But just as I was about to wrap up, Old Man Botan waddled in, his wooden sandals clacking against the floor like a warning bell. Arashi, his arms tucked behind his back, like he was about to hand down a royal decree. "Don't forget the stables before you leave, and wipe down the armor racks." I forced a smile, my jaw so tight it felt like my teeth might snap. Of course, master. Right away. Inside, I was screaming. Of course, master. Right away, master. Would you like me to polish your sandals too, master? Time was slipping away faster than rice through chopsticks. I grabbed a broom and bolted for the stables, cursing under my breath with every step. The stables smelled like a mix of hay, sweat, and something that I was too afraid to identify. I swept in quick, wide strokes, tossing the mess into a corner where it wouldn't be immediately obvious. Good enough, right? By the time I finished the armor racks, a process that involved wiping down every single piece of lacquered wood and polished steel like they were museum exhibits, I was really late. I tossed the rag into a bucket, bowed hastily toward the dojo, and ran like my life depended on it. As soon as I hit the dirt path that led to school, I realized two things. 1, my hands still smelled like horse shit. 2, I'd forgotten about the dog. You see, there was this stray mutt that roamed the village. Scruffy-looking thing with patchy fur and a bad attitude. Earlier that morning, I'd chased him off when he got too close to the elder's shrine. Now it seemed he was holding a grudge. The moment I rounded the corner, there he was, waiting for me like some kind of furry hitman. "Oh, come on," I yelled, already running before he could lunge. That damn dog tore after me, barking like I owed him money. I zigzagged through the narrow alleys, my bag bouncing against my back, but he was relentless. I glanced over my shoulder and... bad idea. My foot caught on a rock and down I went, face first into a puddle of muddy water. Shit, I spat, scrambling to my feet. The dog stopped a few feet away, wagging his tail like he'd just won some twisted game. "You happy now, you little bastard?" By the time I got to school, I looked like something that had crawled out of a swamp. My uniform was soaked and splattered with mud, my hair was plastered to my forehead, and I was pretty sure there was still dirt in my mouth. The classroom fell silent the second I walked in. "Nice of you to join us, Arashi," the teacher said, barely glancing up from his chalkboard. "Take your seat." Quickly. I slunk to the back of the room, trying to ignore the snickers and whispers that followed me. One of the bullies, Ichiro, leaned over as I passed his desk. "Did you wrestle a pig on your way here, Kaito?" he sneered, his friends bursting into laughter. "Yeah," I shot back without missing a beat. "Your mom says hi, by the way." The laughter stopped. Ichiro glared at me, but I didn't care. I dropped into my seat, mud and all, and stared out the window, pretending not to notice the mess I was leaving on the chair. Sometimes life felt like one long slapstick routine with me as the butt of the joke. But hey, at least I made it to school. Sort of. I slouched in my chair, still dripping a bit of muddy water onto the floor. The rest of the class was trying to focus on whatever the teacher was scribbling on the board, but I was too busy trying to scrape dried dirt off my arms without drawing attention. My seat smelled like wet dog, and I was pretty sure my notebook was ruined, but hey, I was here. Barely. The teacher, Mr. Saito, was one of those old-school types who looked like he had been born in a kimono and sandals. He spoke in this slow, deliberate way, like every word was some ancient proverb we should be honored to hear. Today, he was going on about Bushido, the way of the warrior. "Discipline isn't just about following rules," he said, turning to face the class. His eyes landed on me for a second longer than felt comfortable, like he could smell the trouble brewing in my soul. "It's about mastering yourself. A warrior doesn't blame the wind for blowing, he adjusts his sails." I leaned back and stifled a yawn, mumbling under my breath, "Yeah, well, the wind never got chased by a dog." "What was that, Arashi?" Mr. Saito's voice cut through the room. "Nothing, sir." I shot up straighter, my face heating up. The rest of the class snickered, and I sank lower into my seat, wishing I could disappear. Then came the pop quiz. A surprise attack that hit harder than a slap from my mom. I stared at the paper, the kanji swimming on the page as if they were mocking me. By the time I'd answered 3 questions, I heard the unmistakable sound of crumpled paper being passed around behind me. I glanced back just in time to see Ichiro, yes, the same guy from earlier, launch a wad of paper at my head. It hit me square in the back. I turned, glaring at him, but he just smirked and pointed at the board like he was actually paying attention. Oh, it was on. I grabbed the wad, scribbled something snarky on it, and chucked it back when Mr. Saito turned to write more kanji. It hit Ichiro's desk with a satisfying thud, But of course, Mr. Saito chose that exact moment to turn around. "Kaito Arashi," he said, his voice sharp. "Care to share with the class what's so important?" Nothing, sir," I muttered, my face burning. He picked up the paper, opened it, and read my note aloud. "Nice aim, jackass." The class erupted in laughter, and even Mr. Saito's stern facade cracked for a moment before he set me to stand outside. I shuffled out, muttering every curse I knew under my breath. Standing in the hallway wasn't so bad, though. It gave me a chance to catch my breath and dry off a little. Plus, the view from the hallway window was killer. The mountains stretched out like a painting, and for a moment, I almost forgot I was in trouble. Almost. Eventually, I was allowed back in, and the day dragged on. By lunchtime, my stomach was growling like a wild animal. I pulled out my bento box, which my mom had packed with care, and started shoveling rice into my mouth. The afternoon didn't get much better. During gym class, we had to practice kendo, and I got paired with Daichi. He'd been waiting for this moment all day, and it showed. Every strike he made felt personal, and by the end of it, I was sweaty, bruised, and more determined than ever to wipe that smug grin off his face. Someday.